to you, Dr. Freckleton.
Thank you. Sergeant, I was asking you about your day. You've referred to crises and driving around and administrative tasks and responding to matters as they arise. What about when it hits 4:30? Are you at leisure and off duty to relax?
Personally, no.
Tell Her Honour about that.
Normally I'm trying to catch up on my paperwork, and normally I don't leave the station till about 6 most days. So I start around 7. I normally walk out about 6 o'clock.
What about after 6? Do you have any, is it complete downtime?
And then do a few more things, then take my dogs for a walk.
Do you have contact from members of the community after 6 in the evening?
They ring me often, and sometimes, just depends.
Tell Her Honour about the challenges of being a remote police officer. We've heard about some of the positive aspects. You've described your enthusiasm to keep returning to remote communities.
Yep.
What are some of the things which are challenging for members?
I think because we all live in a compound, so we work together and then we live right beside each other. It can be challenging if you're out there by yourself. It can be quite lonely. Also, it takes 3 hours to get to Alice, so if you've got to get home to a family member that might be sick, by the time you get home and try and coordinate that, so that can be challenging. I guess just, we can't just go out. There's just not a restaurant down the street to go out to, or go grab a coffee, or, so it can be challenging.
We've heard about issues already in this inquest about fatigue, and that applied apparently at the time of the ART being called out. Is fatigue an issue?
It is. If you don't have enough members, because obviously you're on call overnight if no one's working, and often members are on rec leave, so there might only be a few of you, and if you get called out through the night, on several occasions, then you start to get really tired, and fatigue can be an issue.
What about burnout of officers?
Yeah, definitely. Fatigue, if you're continually called out and fatigue hits, and, you feel like you don't stop, you can burn out.
What measures do you utilise to try to maintain the longevity of members at your station?
So we have an on-call roster, and if they've been called out, if they're on call consecutive days, then I might move them to another day if they've been called out and they've been up all night. So we have foils. I try and ensure that they get in regularly to Alice for a break, if I can. So that kind of tries to stop any risks of them getting tired or burnt out.
And you've referred to having a number of members at the moment.
Yes.
Who are short-term persons who are brought in for relief.
Yep.
Is that a common situation that you interview in similar stations?
Yeah, look, there is relief, but sometimes there isn't. So if you're in a 3-man station, fatigue can be quite hard to manage. And again, it's not that there's probably members that want to come out, but there's no housing. So housing is still our issue.
And you've referred to many very positive issues about the Yuendamu community, but from that appendix to your statement, it's apparent that there are challenges in providing policing services as well.
Yes.
Is it a community where for more than a decade tensions between families have erupted unpredictably?
Yes.
There were particular issues back in 2010, were there not, which resulted in large disturbances?
Yes.
And were those wholly resolved between the family units, or are there still lingering issues?
Every now and then they linger up, but those rights over all those years. That was when South Camp went to Adelaide and they come back, and that's where
Yes.
the Peace Park was created for a place for them both to be safe, because it's supposed to be like neutral. So for most of the time, every now and then it will just bubble up a bit, but no, most of the time that's laid to rest.
In terms of bubbling up, without going into details, there have been issues latterly, have there not?
Sorry?
Just in the last few weeks, there have been issues.
Yeah, but not in relation to that.
No. But were the issues involving family members such that the TRG needed to be called out within the last fortnight?
3 weeks ago, I think. 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
4 weeks ago, maybe. Yeah. Yes.
Yes. And again, just family issues, but such as to require the TRG to be brought in from Darwin.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. And are there, when you referred to there being weapons in community, what were you referring to? What kinds of weapons are there which can be availed of if there are problems?
So the weapons out there were machetes, boomerangs, axes, knives, nullas.
Okay. And when there are tensions involving family units or between families,
Yes.
is it a phenomenon that is well understood by police that those weapons can be utilised?
Yes.
And what do you say, if anything, about the need for you to be in a position to respond if you find yourself in that sort of a situation where those weapons are being utilised?
We go out and respond. Yes.
And what do you need in order to enable you to respond safely for the members of the community and yourselves?
Well, we have all our kit on, like we'll wear our vest
Right.
and have all our accoutrements. Make sure we're prepared before we go out, knowing that they're fighting with weapons.
Yes. How unpredictable is the eruption of tension?
Look, it's been a little bit constant over the last couple of months, so we're not surprised when we hear that there's fighting.
Yes. I'd just like to show you the operational safety and use of force instructions. That's to be found at 17-3. I wonder if that could be put up on the screen, please. Go first to paragraphs 7 and 8, which are on page 6. Just to, while that's being found, tell Her Honour what the operational safety and use of force instruction is, if you would, in broad terms.
So, use of force, like our safety principles, and is that what you're referring to?
Operational safety and use of force
Yeah,
instruction.
that's a general order.
Yes, one
Yeah.
of the general orders binding all police,
Sorry?
but it applies to all police.
Yes,
members.
yes, yes.
And those kinds of orders apply to officers serving in remote communities as much as to those in Darwin and Alice and Cato, do they not?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the document I'm referring you to.
Yep.
So
Yep.
page 6, paragraph 7 and 8. There we go. Do you see this relates to operational safety equipment, Sergeant?
Yep.
All right, paragraph 5 then. Operational members are issued with operational equipment. You see that?
Yes.
Can I direct your attention to the next heading, minimum accoutrement carriage requirements?
Yes.
You see that?
Yes.
First one, when performing operational duties, all members are to carry all items of approved equipment relevant to their operational circumstances. See that?
Yes.
Is that binding on you?
Sorry? Yeah.
Yes. And so does that require you, for instance, to carry your Glock?
Yes.
And what other things are you required to carry pursuant to that?
So we carry our spray, taser, handcuffs.
Right. And that's referred to in paragraph 8. Is that right? The next one down. See that?
Yep. Sorry, my eyes aren't that great.
Sorry. And in short, is that the requirement from those in charge of a force in relation to what you have on you in terms of accoutrements?
Yes.
I wonder if we could go in that same document, please, to page 24 and paragraph 178. That's it, perfect, thank you very much. And you can see that this is headed public events, demonstrations, sporting events and other. And you see that that again requires you to carry equipment relevant to the circumstances, but there's a stipulation at a minimum you're to carry things when attending even things like school lectures. Do you see that? When you're doing it officially in uniform.
Yes.
Right. So, in short, this is a pretty across-the-board obligation to make sure that you've got your Glock and other things so that you're in a position to respond to any crises that might arise unpredictably pretty much anywhere.
Yes.
Thank you. That can go down. Thank you. You were asked some questions a moment ago about paragraph 14 of your statement, and that was the subject of the question from our learned friend. I'm not going to walk into that difficulty, but in that paragraph you refer to having made a report in relation to Kumanjayi and also his girlfriend. Do you recall that?
Yes.
That was back in 2015. What I'd like to ask you about is where that report went to and what you know about what became of that report.
Report to Family and Children's?
Yes, so it went to a Department of Family and Children.
Yes.
And that's, do you make such a report when you're worried about the circumstances and the safety of minors?
Yes.
And that places the issue squarely in the hands of those who deal with children with what I call protective issues.
Yes.
Now, in those days and then now, what happens after that? The department does what it does. Is there a feedback loop whereby you're told what has happened in response to your report?
Sometimes.
Right.
I can't remember on this incident because so long ago, but like when we do our reports now, they ask you if you want feedback.
Uh-huh.
So it's a question on when you actually do the report. Would you like feedback?
And what do you generally say?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Do you get it?
Yeah. Well, it's there's a little bit of feedback, but it either say the case has been closed or it's been investigated, and they give you a little bit of feedback, but not enough that I believe to probably that helpful. Do you know what I mean?
I do, but let's tease it out a little bit. If you've taken the trouble to draw to the attention of the department that there is a child, for instance, who doesn't seem to be sleeping at home, or is getting into bother with his or her boyfriend, girlfriend,
Yep.
or they don't seem to be getting the food that they need. Is that something that the reason why you make such a report is that something needs to be done and followed up?
Yes.
Right? And do you not need some feedback about whether the situation has resolved or whether action's been taken or whether it's an ongoing issue that you need to keep a bit of a watch over.
Yes.
Because you might well need to speak to family members or persons on the local council or elders or others. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So do you say to the court that that feedback is not always as fulsome as you would like it to be, and it would be constructive if it were more fulsome?
Yes.
Now, I'd like to ask you about early morning arrests, not the one in question.
Yep.
But you've told Her Honour that going to arrest people early in the morning has advantages because they're pretty sleepy. And so if there are any issues in relation to their posing a risk,
Yes.
going in at that time plays a role in reducing the risk of taking them into custody.
Yes.
Is that right? I wonder if you could just walk Her Honour through, from your experience, what is done when somebody is taken into custody at that early hour of the morning? From the time the officers, however many there are, get to the door of a house where it is believed that the person is. What happens?
So we'll knock on the door. Generally they...
So you don't just go through the door, even if you've got a warrant or whatever?
No.
You knock on the door.
We'll knock on the door.
Why do you knock on the door?
Because we're to... Unless they don't answer... Well, let me go back. Our training is to avoid, forced entries unless it's required.
Yes.
And for us, if we knock on the door and they answer it, well,
Yes.
everything's good. And so we'll normally have 4 of us, 2 at the front door, 2 at the back door. We'll knock on the front door. They'll answer it. Generally, most times, they'll answer it and we'll just ask, so whoever we're looking for, and they'll generally point to the room they're in.
So you say, is Fred there?
Yep.
And generally you'll be
They'll
directed to
yep,
the room
okay.
where Fred is?
Yep, down there.
Okay.
And we'll normally go in into the room and locate them.
Let me stop you.
Yep.
It's 5:30 in the morning. The reason you're going there early
Yep.
is to try to take Fred a bit unawares.
Yep.
But there you are knocking on the door.
Yep.
And other people are coming to the front door and taken aback. There are police, and you say, "Can we come in?" And
Yep.
they generally say yes. You say.
Yep.
So when you come, doesn't that mean your element of surprise in relation to Fred has been reduced?
I can tell you, we knock for a while. It takes them a while to wake up.
That's important.
So it takes a while for someone to wake up and,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Now I interrupted you. You're in the house now.
Yep.
You've been told that Fred's down the passageway somewhere. What
Yep.
happens after that?
So we'll go in there, find Fred.
Do you knock on Fred's door as well?
No.
Okay. You just open up the door to get Fred, do you? At that point?
Yeah. Go in. If it's locked, we'll knock and, but generally it depends. So if it's open, we'll go in,
Yes.
and wake them up, handcuff them, take
So
them.
that generally are the doors of front doors of houses in the Uindamu community locked?
Yes. Yep.
And what about individual doors within houses? Are they generally locked or
Sometimes.
some?
Yep.
All right.
So generally go in and wake him up and handcuff them and explain to them that they're under arrest and why they're under arrest.
Yes. And so you were saying before I interrupted you that you go in and you get handcuffs on them quite quickly.
Yeah.
What's the reason for that?
So we're doing an early morning one. It normally means that they've got the potential for violence or maybe they're a runner. So we want to get them quick. Gets up quick and runs.
Trying
Yep.
to take off to avoid custody.
Yes.
Now, from the sound of it, there's not a lot of talking at that stage because there have been discussions with you already.
Yep.
You ask questions about negotiations and the need to have, or the advantages of having an ACPO or an ALO present.
Yes.
But in this situation, from what the sound of it, you're trying to get in quickly, get handcuffs on. What about talking after that?
Yep. Then we'll talk to the person we've arrested and the family. We'll stay there for a while. And there's 4 of us normally, so 2 will go back with whoever we've arrested, and the other 2 will normally stay and just chat to the family. And the family will come up. We'll encourage the family to come up to be with whoever we've got in our custody.
On this issue of talking, I just want to ask you about the facility with English of young persons in the Uendamu community and more generally too.
Yep.
We've heard a little bit about Kumanjayi and that he was a bit hard of hearing from the sound of it.
Yes.
And not a great talker.
Yes.
With the young people, by which I mean, say, people between 14 and 20, how extensive is their English in your experience?
Depends on the family, depends on the child.
Yes.
Definitely if they're hard of hearing, if we have someone that talks language, it is easier for them because of their disability.
Yes. And are those hearing deficits quite common?
Yes. Yeah, they are.
And so is that one of the reasons why you try to have an ACPO or an ALO present who can talk to them in language?
It's beneficial to have someone that can talk language.
And that's because, one, they're more likely to understand what's being said to them.
Yeah, it does, and it reinforces what we've said to make sure they understand.
So you
Yes.
can communicate more effectively
Yeah.
with them. And with young people, but does that play a role in reducing their anxieties?
Yes.
And is that an important issue, especially with taking young persons into custody?
Yeah, that's why we encourage family to come up with them because it makes them feel more secure and safe. Yeah.
I'd like to ask you now about risk assessments when arresting people. Now, you probably don't write down a formal risk assessment when even planned apprehensions take place. Is that right?
Not always, no.
When do you, what do you do by way of thinking through risks and options when you are going to arrest someone?
So we look at the house, if there's children in the house. Obviously we've looked at the alerts on the person. If the person's, got a potential for high violence, if they have weapons, all those risks we take into consideration before we go.
Now, you say we take into consideration...
My team, the team going.
The team?
Yep.
And you may or may not be leading it?
If I'm on duty, I'd be leading it. If I wasn't,
Right.
my most senior officer would be leading it.
Yes. And so is there a discussion that takes place about these sorts of issues and the best way of taking the person into custody with the least risk to everyone involved?
Yes. Yep.
Does that happen just sometimes or all the time?
If we're going to arrest someone, we always sit and discuss it before we go.
And when you say discuss it, does that mean that...
Formulate our plan? Yeah.
Going to
Yeah.
probe
Yes.
the officers?
Yes.
And do you involve an ACPO if there's one around, or an ALO if they know people involved?
Yes.
And is it open to them to contribute to those discussions?
Of course.
And do they contribute to those discussions?
Our ALOs are pretty new, but if they know the person, they certainly will. And obviously, like I said, we haven't had Derek for a while, so normally we would include Derek if he's on duty.
So in the Derek days, in other
Yeah.
words, before this, he'd be part of that conversation if he was available.
Yes.
And to be clear, Derek hasn't really been available since the trauma of all of this for the last 3 years, has he?
No, he hasn't.
And it's one of the consequences of that being that there hasn't been a functioning ACPO at gestation during that time.
We've had one relieving ACPO, but no,
Not from the local community, is that right?
not from the local community, no.
Is it very advantageous to have an ACPO from at least the general vicinity so that they can speak language and be particularly familiar with the local cultural issues?
Yeah. So generally, our other communities that are close by have the same languages, and they know multiple languages, so they normally know the region. So it doesn't necessarily have to be from Uendamu, but around.
And that, for instance, that means one of those 4 communities to which you referred earlier.
Or Papanya,
Or Papua.
Kintor.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about the ALOs. You've told Her Honour about the advantages of ACPOs. ALOs are a new form of employee that have been brought on board, I think, over the last 2 or so years. Is that right?
I think it was around 2015 we had our first one. 16 maybe.
Okay.
Just from memory, because I know I had 2 when I was there last time. So.
All right. So tell Her Honour a bit about what, to your knowledge, brought about the involvement of ALOs in the Northern Territory Police Force.
I think it was just about language, and they're like a liaison officer between police and the community, and helps with language understanding. Also use them to go out and sometimes in the school we might use them to go and talk to the kids, or help with the school. They help us serve summonses, find people. They're very good at finding people.
Right.
If we just want them to come up for, we might have something outstanding, we'll go, can you go and find so-and-so? They generally can bring them, and if we think they don't understand something, it's good for them to reiterate what we're trying to say to them and make sure they understand. So, and they can do just general patrols to tell us what's going out in the community. They're a good source of information if anything is happening in the community. So they do a number of things. They're very helpful.
Do ALOs tend to be from the general vicinity, or are they generic persons of an Indigenous background? So might you get someone from Wadeye coming to Uendamu?
No, so at the moment we've got one from Largermoney, not Largermoney, Laramba, but has family at Uendamu as well.
Right, so they can speak the local language?
Yes. One that's got family in Ulamu, right. One that's got family in Yuruppi, and one that's a Uendamu person.
So you've got quite a few assisting at the moment.
Yes.
Yep, cool, thank you. And are they busy at the station, contributing to?
It can be, and of course they're not always there, because obviously cultural issues take them away regularly. If someone's passed away, they'll go off to Sorry, royalties and things like that. So we don't always have the 4 there. Generally we've got 1 or 2.
But if one summarised it as there being a significant bridge between the force and the local community, would that be accurate?
Yeah, they're very helpful. When they're working, they're very helpful.
I want to ask you about alcohol, because you raised that with Verona yesterday, and you
Yep.
told Verona that Uendamu is a dry community, and
Yep.
has been for a long time.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, has there been, until recent times, on the issue that Dr. Dwyer raised with you,
Yes.
Quite an amount of alcohol and ganja accessible to members of the community who wanted it?
Definitely the alcohol has increased. The ganja, I think, has always been a bit of an issue in community. I don't think that's increased any, but definitely the alcohol.
Just latterly?
Yeah, just recently.
And just before we get to the recent situation, did alcohol make its way into community anyway, in spite of the formal preclusions?
A little bit, but not as much. Now it's easier to get.
Yes.
Here in Alice Springs, so there's more flowing in.
And is the outcome of that, from a policing point of view, more domestic violence, more child abuse, and more assaults generally?
No, I'd just say more, probably DVs, probably just more violent.
You made reference.
Can I just check that?
Thank you, Anna.
More DVs in number, more.
I think more severity. I think.
Right, so the number's staying the same, but if there's.
I'd have to have a look.
More serious.
I'd have to have a look if they've increased, but I think it's definitely the violence has increased. Maybe the extent of the assaults.
You made reference yesterday to the police stationed prior to or during the period of the intervention, and a change in relation to that. Can you tell Her Honour what you were referring to there? Yes, that's right. Earlier today, you made reference to there being at Mirapi and somewhere else, I think.
Wallara.
Wallara.
Yep.
The police being stationed at those other communities during the intervention.
Yes.
That stopped. When did it stop? Can you tell Her Honour? No, I don't need a specific date. Was it just recently or a little while?
No, the actual stations have not been manned. I don't know what year it was, but it was before I left last time, so it had to be between 2014 and 2017. So they were manned when I first went there.
Yes.
And during my period there in Yunamu, those police stations were unmanned. I don't know about Wallara. We never had Wallara, so definitely Mirapi wasn't. Can't talk for Wallara, actually.
And is that a problem in terms of police being able to have relationships with members of a community and really stay on top of issues that may be emerging?
Look, yes, we don't, well, I feel like we don't give the best that we can because we're not there. Like, I know the community loved it when we had police at Mirapi. And I think to form good relationships, you need to be in the community to form them. We do have a lot of European people living at Yunamu at the moment due to the unrest, but it is an issue not being able to be there. And sometimes we might not, if we're really busy in Yunamu, sometimes we might not get there for like 4 weeks, 6 weeks.
If that's the case, a lot can have happened in that intervening period without you really having the usual intelligence as to what's taking place and where issues may be emerging.
Yeah, we'd have one person we do talk to regularly.
Yes.
So that's helpful. But if we get a job, then we've got to drive all the way over there to sort that job out.
And that's 4 or 5 hours?
2 hours.
And Yuendamu varies somewhere between 800 and 900 people, is that right?
Yeah, around that.
What about Mirapi?
Probably about 200, 300 at most.
And Yuendamu?
Yuendamu's about the same size as Mirapi.
Yes.
And then Wallara's about the same size too.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much, Nora.
Thank you. Mr. Hutton.
I'll be brief, Your Honour.
Thank you.
Sergeant Jolly, my name's Tom Hutton. I appear for NT Health.
Yep.
Sergeant Jolly, you gave evidence yesterday in response to a question from Mr. Bolton that Yuendamu is like a small country town where everyone knows each other.
Yep.
Is it a small enough community, Sergeant Jolly, that people living in Yuendamu also typically know where other community members live within the community?
Yeah.
Is it known within the community, do you think, which houses are occupied by health staff?
Yes.
And unlike with the police accommodation, which I think you described as being within a compound,
Yep.
am I right to say that health accommodation is dotted around the Yuendamu community?
Yeah, it is spread around a bit.
Thank you. And just one other matter. I understand from your answer to Dr. Freckleton a moment ago that there is no police station in Yuendamu. Is that
Yuendamu? Yep.
Yuendamu, thank you. So requests for assistance from that community are responded to by your station?
Yes.
And that's the situation currently. Is that also the situation when you commenced in Yuendamu in 2014?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything arising from the fire?
Just briefly, although I know that Sergeant Jolly's looking at me suspiciously when I say that, but genuinely briefly. Sergeant Jolly, are ALOs ever involved in the arrest process?
No, they don't have police powers.
And then just a couple of follow-up questions in relation to your contact with other service providers who might be able to assist a child in need, like Kumanjayi was. Do you recall Antoinette Carroll at all, who was with the service then known as Carless, which was merged into Naja.
Don't remember that person, no.
Then my last topic relates to the issue of trauma and any counselling services that might be available. You've given evidence that there is no trauma counsellor based in Yuendumu, and you would like to see one or more trauma specialists there. And you talked about Ghana trauma counselling. Just for the transcript, I think that is GAN-NA. And you just referred to them as Ghana, I think, that came out after Kumanjayi passed away. Did you get any briefing as to where they were from or what they were going to try and do?
Yes, that was that. I was told they were a healing organisation that worked with trauma, and they were coming out to assist with the community, get through and try and get some healing.
And did they stay for about 6 weeks?
Yeah, they did stay for quite a while. Yep.
And did you understand that to be an Aboriginal healing model that could be used to assist a particular community?
Yeah.
And is it your evidence that they appeared to be of some assistance?
Yeah.
Did they engage with police at all when they were there?
Yeah. Well, we went to a couple of meetings, like with the elders, where some of them were there.
Okay.
Yeah. So they did engage. Yes.
So were you effectively invited to those meetings by the elders or by the?
We'd had arranged them. Yeah, the superintendent and myself.
I see. So you arranged meetings with the community, and then Ghana came along to those.
And they were there. Yeah, one of the workers was there when we went there, because we do the men and then the women. So the women were there, the Ghana women, that one, and then the other bloke was at the can't think of his name, but he was at the men's meeting that we had.
I see. So in terms of calling the community together for a meeting, did you initiate meetings with women separate to men? Or?
Yeah, this was the main elders around the trial stuff, and then we speak to the women and just talk to them, any concerns or, yeah.
And you just referred there to a superintendent, you and the superintendent.
Yes.
Who was that?
Superintendent Pruss, Brett Pruss.
Brett Proust.
Yep.
P-R-O-U-S-T for the transcript.
P-R-O-W-S-E.
W-S-E. Thank you, Brett Proust. P-R-O-W-S-E. Thank you. And then in terms of the availability of any trauma counselling, this is based in the community and ongoing. Are you aware currently of any communities around Yuendumu who have that service?
No.
Are you aware of the only other police shooting of an Aboriginal person in the last 40 or 50 years that occurred at Tea Tree in the 1980s?
Yeah.
Do you know whether or not there's any ongoing trauma that you're aware of as a police officer in Tea Tree?
Yeah, apparently I was talking to the officer in charge there. She says there definitely is.
And are there trauma counselling specialists available for that community?
No.
Do you think there should be, drawing on your experience?
I think there should be, yep.
And then finally, officer, in terms of your role, as much as you enjoy it and you've told us the positives,
Yep.
is there some trauma that you or other officers experience on occasion?
On occasions we see a lot of, bad stuff sometimes, and of course it affects us. We're only human, so.
And if there was a counselling service in the community available to police officers, would that be something that
would be helpful?
In terms of what helps currently, can you just tell us what is important to a police officer in terms of being able to deal with that?
It's important to be able to talk to each other and debrief and support each other. It's really important for us all. In Yuendumu, we have what we call the fire pit place, and that's where we all go and sit and debrief if we feel the need.
And from your superiors, is there any helpful
Yeah, definitely. I've never felt so supported. Senior Sergeant Finesse and Superintendent Brett Proust have been very supportive since I've been back in Yuendumu, which has been really appreciated. Yeah.
Thank you, Donna. Nothing further.
Well, I think you'll be pleased to know that you've survived. I know that at times it was difficult for you to listen to some of the evidence and be asked to respond to it. For the record, I am going to put it on the record because I think it's important. And it would not necessarily be obvious to others through the live stream. But particularly, I did notice that when you were being asked those difficult questions about the text messages, that you were clearly affected by the content of those messages. And I thank you for, being prepared to listen and to reflect on and provide your reflections on those messages. My takeaway though from your evidence was your answer about being a strong cop. And you told us that a strong cop is fair, honest, transparent, they do the best they can, they treat everyone like they would want their own family treated. And I very much appreciated your reflections on your opinion as to what you meant by a strong cop.
Thank you.
And I'm sure that you do in the community appreciate those reflections as well.
Thank you, Your Honour.
I think we can let you go and we can take a lunch break.